A conduit through which the entire force flows, I've taken to nicknaming this place the Between, or simply Between, capital B. I've heard a few other fans call it a few other things. Curious whichever words you guys use when it comes to discussing this place. To my knowledge, they haven't really expounded on the Between all that much. So I guess that leaves it to me to do so. This is a literal nexus hub. A place that feels constructed, if I was to put it into such terminology. Probably a very long time ago, tens of thousands of years ago, and done so deliberately to basically bake a physical plane into the literal force. Or to put this in other terms, in more mundane magical sense, I would say this is effectively a subplane. Not a completely separate dimension, an attached dimension. One that is affected by and affects its parent dimension. The real dimension, reality. This feels like the place where, when the force most strongly resonates in time and space, that causes let's call it a focus at that specific point. And all of those focus points are apparent and visible here within the Between, allowing you to reach out to certain specific moments where significant events happen and interact with them. I also love how they visually present this place, by the way, and audibly. Not only does it literally look like just a giant place of space with these conduits and the little constellations and pseudo not quite painted design, but I also love how they keep playing quotes from the shows and the movies that directly react to what they're thinking and saying and feeling at any given moment, to show that this place is in many ways refractive of those who are within it. This, of course, gets across the threat. They never say it outright, but they don't have to. This is exactly what Palpatine wanted. Now, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Some people like this and some people don't. I'm not sure which I'm in yet. I'm still debating that. But as ever, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Do you think this is ridiculous, awesome, stupid, interesting, disinteresting? I'd love to hear your thoughts. So we find out that the Convor, is actually still Morai, the daughter, and who is apparently still active. Not sure what I think of that. I never really liked the Mortis arc, but whatever. Ahsoka and Vader's confrontation is interesting. As the temple was self-destructing, Ahsoka jabbed down. This made Vader fall, which arguably is what actually saved his life. Now, Ezra is the one who saved Ahsoka's life, pulling him out and then pushing her back in at a safe point. Which leaves me with the question, where the hell is Ahsoka? And where has she been for a long time? She was effectively saved. She is alive. But the last time she was alive was back in Season 2. So, where has she been? It makes sense that based on what she has seen, she would deliberately try to avoid re-interacting with the rebel crew, for fear of altering time, thanks to her knowledge of it. But at some point or another, she's going to have to resurface. And to my knowledge, she never did. If there's been something that I've missed somewhere, probably a comic or something, because I don't keep as much track of those, please feel free to share it, because to my knowledge, this is the end of Ahsoka Tano's story, timeline-wise, right here. Her bouncing back back in Season 2. So, I suppose I bring that up and I spend so much time on it, not only because she's a beloved character, but because from a purely writer's perspective, there's only two reasons for this whole thing to exist. Ultimately, all of this could have been just completely written out of the story, and it wouldn't really change much. Not really. The main thrust of the threat of Price, and the Imperials, and Thrawn, all of that's still there. Even Palpatine only makes what is effectively a cameo appearance, although they do a decent job of him. Notice how powerful he is, even when he's not actually there. But, again, there's only two narrative points that this really changes. One, Ahsoka lives. Obvious. They didn't need to do this, and it would have been easy to have it just say she survived in the same way Vader survived. Not hard to do. So that's not really necessary. That leads us to the other thing that it changes. Palpatine. I know that sounds like a strange statement, but if you examine the EU, which I know wasn't always codified, after he won at the end of Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine basically retired. I've mentioned this several times before. This was never really 100% codified, it's worth noting, but Palpatine just kind of took a back seat. He'd get involved. He'd play his advisors against each other. He would play his governors and moffs against each other. He'd make speeches now and again, and he would have his own personal interests, but basically he just enjoyed retirement. Everything else was just a little bit of day-to-day maintenance. He enjoyed the fruits of his labor, is what I mean. I call it retirement because he wasn't actually striving for anything anymore. And it's also my opinion that his giving up all of the actual major effort and work is one of the biggest reasons why A, the Empire went to pot, and B, why he was capable of being defeated several times back in the EU, including the final time, and the final time after that, and the one after that, and the one after that. The EU, am I right? The AU, we haven't had a lot of information on Palpatine personally. Not since the original the prequel trilogy. This is one of the only insights we have. And this insight is actually very crucial because it completely changes everything. Which is funny because this is the second time the AU has done that. The other time would be Operation Cinder, which I don't even want to talk about. Here we find out he didn't retire or give up or just decide to settle in and enjoy the fruits of his labors like he did over in the EU. No, here he wanted the next step up. He wanted to control time and space directly through the Force. Yeah. That speaks magnitudes to the level of mindset and megalomania. I don't know what else to call that Palpatine has, that the AU Palpatine has. That he is that damaged of an individual, that he thinks that not only should that it is within his grasp, but it should be in his grasp, that this is what should be his, that he should have command over such a force, no pun intended. I shudder to think of a galaxy under the control of a Palpatine who could so directly and personally manipulate events like that, even if he was only limited to strong nexus points in the Force, per my theory of the between. That's still pretty significant and horrible. That's it, though. Those two methods are the only things that I feel this actually matters for. And I think ultimately that's why, I'll go ahead and give my opinion, I don't care for its inclusion. I didn't like its inclusion when it was first mentioned, and I don't like it that much now. Ignoring the fact that they're literally doing time alteration within Star Wars, and time is always the thing you gotta be super, super careful about touching, or else it just goes to pot. It's the second time today I've said that. It's also, it just doesn't work for me because it's to no purpose. It's like, hey look, there's time travel. Okay, why? Any narrative device you're going to use, you have to use it for a purpose, for some singular reason, or multiple reasons, as the case may be. And like I said, I just don't buy either reason here. I don't like the idea of Palpatine being that, but even if I did, there's other ways to showcase it. I mean, they did that with the Sith idiot all the way back in the Tor storyline, who was going for a similar goal, I feel like adding. And Ahsoka living is easy. We never found a body. It's Star Wars. Done. So why do this? So Ahsoka is alive. The daughter opens, the son closes the gateway. I find that fascinating, by the way. I mean, if you think about it from a philosophical perspective, that means that being in tune with the will of the Force allows you to enter the between, and trying to enforce your will upon the will of the Force is what closes it. That could be taken to imply that this between is something that is intended to be used, that should be used. Which is interesting because, to my knowledge, it's only really used once with Ahsoka, and I doubt she's that substantial or significant. At least, if she was, she certainly doesn't seem to have had any such significance yet. And yes, I know Palpatine laughs in the trailer leading up to Episode 9, so who knows? Maybe this is all going to come back around in Episode 9. I do like how Haydn, the minister guy, appeals to Sabine's sense of artistry to try and get her to cooperate. You know, he could threaten her, and he does end up actually threatening her, but he just goes with discourse. It's a nice little touch. It's a very brief insight into another Imperial mentality, very Thrawn-esque. I do wish it was advisor instead of minister, though. I'm not even sure the advisors exist in the AU. I don't know. And then he dies, you know, like you do. That's actually all I got. I hope you guys have enjoyed here. Like I said, I'm going to share my theory of the Force later. But now we've got 2 episodes left. See you next time, guys.